Aloha everybody, I'm Bert Lum, I'm with Hawaii Open Data, and we're here for the very first IconLocal. And what is an IconLocal? Well, what we're going to be doing is developing some icons, and we're doing it in conjunction with the Noun Project. And what the Noun Project has done is provided an archive of all these sort of universal symbols that are basically open source. And they've been successful in doing icons for a number of different projects. Could be anything from transportation to civic hacking to things like health. And we're going to be tackling the topic of homelessness, and we're going to be developing some icons for the service providers that deal with the homeless community. So we're teaming up with the Institute for Human Services as well as the Interagency Council for the Homeless. And we've invited a number of designers, we've got subject matter experts, and we also have all the civic innovators that are interested in getting involved with doing something for their community. So it's going to be a great project, and thanks for all of you joining us. You know, I've been wanting to do something with the Noun Project, and ever since working last year with the Code for America and seeing what the folks at the Noun Project was doing, I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool to do something like that here in Hawaii. But the key is, finding the right people at the right time to all come together to actually participate. So when Ben brought it up, I thought, yeah, this is great. So if you can bring the designers to the table, then we can pull, the civic innovators and the subject matter experts together and actually do something.
You fall in, how do we get you back out again? And you don't get them back out unless you can figure out a way to answer the questions and to solve the problems that caused you to fall in the first place. So this is complicated, but a picture's not complicated. And so that's what you're here for. I'm going to turn it over now to Connie. She's a subject matter expert. She runs IHS.
It's a very practical, I have interest in it because I think it's very practical and it's very valuable in that way. So I'm very, very excited to be a part of this project. I think that when people who are homeless service providers get connected up with other people who are doing different kinds of things with different talents, to me that is awesome, because it really means that we're a community together and that we are really, dealing with this particular problem that we have in our community as a whole. And it's not just service providers out there doing it. So thank you very much for being here. I'm very, very grateful.
So both these symbols are representing the same referent, which is ophthalmology. And both these symbols tested very well, but obviously they're using very different design techniques. The one on the left is using what they call an iconic technique. It's very bold, it's very minimal, and it's simply showing an object that's associated with a referent. In this case, it's an eye. Notice how it can be scaled up or scaled down, and it's still going to read well. The one on the right is using what they call a narrative technique. It's really telling a story. It's showing the process. It's much more visually complicated. So you have a doctor holding a medical instrument in his hands, shining a light to the patient's eye. Again, this one is much more visually complex. Now let's look at some symbols that didn't necessarily test well. Now both these symbols here are representing alternative medicine. Can you guess which one tested best? Well, if you guess the one on the right-hand side, then you're correct.
And under utility assistance, that would be, if somebody's like owing utility. I just yesterday signed a check for someone who, was back on their utilities. It was going to get turned off, so we're able to provide utility assistance so that they would avoid, getting their utility services turned off. Safina?
There are with Goodwill, Salvation Army. There are churches that have also thrift stores, as well as other service-providing nonprofits. Clothing, bedding, furniture, tents available for those. There's also adult protective services. There are some, especially when you start looking at the older population, they're being taken advantage of by others within their family unit. Sometimes they need additional care and protective services.
Hey, there it is.
Just choose that as a lifestyle, and they are entitled to it according to the Constitution.
Right.
Pursuit of happiness.
I'm not saying that intent represents
what's not protected.
only homeless.
I know, but what's not.
I mean, that's not really a number. So
What did you say on like all numbers?
do like the generic, like non.
The subgroups, household types?
Toiletries. Are we trying to incorporate it in one?
Into, yeah, so like maybe there'd be like a package of things, right?
For transitional services?
Right.
This would be, and then the service would be something.
Maybe we need a symbol to add to this. You know, if this means financial literacy, maybe we need a transition symbol.
Or direction?
Yeah, the arrow representing the service.
Homelessness is such a tough one that if there were some way of tying together a universal icon with all the various components, then that would be a
And then do the dotted line.
There's a community of children. Right. There's a teacher here.
that would work.
I mean, you guys have a good network. That's the word you want to use. That's the word you use. I want to try to find ways to make it feel more
Over in the normal area. Yeah. Right.
So, in terms of the system is identifying, okay, I'm a homeless service provider by this icon. But not only am I a homeless service provider, I'm actually a hub. Or I'm a homeless service provider and I provide emergency shelter. That's I thought that was really cool for emergency shelter. Or I'm a homeless provider and my specialty is outreach services.
I guess the main concept that we were looking at is how it's mostly like information. A service hub provides where you can go to get all these services. So at first, I was thinking of the I for information. I think that's kind of like a universal information. And so what we did is we placed it in a house because, you know, we're trying to think of how can you say that this is for homeless?
Right, so we really wanted to illustrate at the center of all of our homeless concept that there is this implied transition into some kind of like four-wall situation or a home. And so that's kind of like all of our house illustrations were based on that idea.
Yeah.
So we kept thinking, what is this person? And we really felt like we needed to have a person there. But how do we show that this person provides all these services? So we thought maybe it's a badge. Maybe it's a person with a bunch of these badges that represent health, housing, and legal services. And then we came up with these hands. Well, we brought it back to the hands because the hands are really like showing help.
The idea we came up with was this kind of symbol, and we had different permutations, but the idea is to have, kind of similar to the one before, is contrast someone who's housed as opposed to someone who's houseless. But the person is the same. At first we had two different people and used a contrast, but we said, no, someone came up with the idea, the person doesn't change whether they're in a house or without a house. And so we have the person in the center, and we used a universal symbol, actually. Got it from the restroom symbol over there, right? And, you know, because again, it's recognizable. And then we did the contrast thing, you know, and the dotted, you know, kind of indicates in a very nice way that this is someone who is, you know, without housing. So that transition in between could be someone who's at risk, whatever it is. But it's always a human being. It's the same person, whether they have a house or not.
Okay. Who hasn't done one yet?
Right here, go right here.
Oh, right over here.
So the whole team decided on the form and then came up with this great idea of having the pen writing out the form. And then we have an arrow system that tells you what it's for. So the first one would be like an identification card. And the second one would be to get like supplemental nutrition and assistance programs. And the third one is money, financial support.
And then I wanted to think about like, what is it like when you're in transition, like you're going through a door, or you're climbing up a ladder, or like it's a journey somewhere. And so I think that that's something that we can go deeper into. So then this is sort of like the whole puzzle put together, right? You have the shield with the transition, or shuffle, or whatever you want to call it, with the people inside of a shelter. So like basically like everything is meant to be interchangeable, and then I feel like if the whole purpose of this is to create a system where we can build these phrases with icons, then everybody has contributed to something that we can do that with. You know what I mean?
We workshop on Twitter.
And he's here on his vacation.
Ultimately, what we want to do is we want to get this into everybody's hands and start using it. And by having the right subject matter experts here, they are the ones influential in getting it, adopted by everybody else. And so your efforts, all the people that participated, this is again something that's going to live on. And I really appreciate all your energy and creative juice that went into this day. So
we don't get to have this conversation in this way in any of the places that I am. And it's all right-brain conversations that we're involved with, which is about data and information. We never have a conversation where you get to see things like that and you get to understand what it is that we're trying to get to and never lose sight of that. That's the difference in having a picture and doing a conversation versus having data and information, because it always fragments. Because the way we do this is we assemble a whole bunch of specific pieces of information to come to a conclusion, rather than saying, I have the conclusion. Now what? So this is really powerful. I have never had this conversation in my year and a month of doing this kind of work in all of the venues that I've been in, that I've had today.
all right, thank you.